There are a number of tropes. That's the only word that comes to mind when I think of these things. Mental health myths that people are buying into in their very sincere, desperate need for answers and for relief from how life affects them, how life plays out. But it's causing so much more harm than good. And yes, I've said before, and I believe it to be true, that there's nothing so bad that there is no good in it. So yes, when you get relief, even if it's a fake relief because you believe something that isn't entirely true, all it means is that the relief you're experiencing is not going to be sustainable, right? So if we believe in, for example, a delusion, if we deluded about something, if we believe something to be true when it's not true, the fact that we believe in it will give us some comfort in that moment of believing in it, until we experience something that convinces us that, okay, hold on, it's not true. And that's what we need to be aware of, is that if we go through life holding on to things that are not in itself intrinsically true, if it's a distraction, if it's a fallacy, if it's an untruth, if it's something that is misinformed, then it's not going to give us sustainable relief. But if we don't ever question whether what we're believing in is actually true, or we don't understand the wisdom behind it so that we can connect the dots between what we believe and how we act and how we feel, if we can't do that, critical thinking, right? The thing that's escaping most people these days. But unfortunately, sometimes you actually need some critical thinking to realize that you're not applying critical thinking. So that gets a bit messy. But the point is, if you don't realize that what you're holding on to as this infallible truth is actually not, you're going to get temporary relief, and then you're going to keep getting knocked, keep getting hit, keep getting smacked from the side, from places you never expected it from, and sometimes even from the same source every single time. And you're going to be convinced that that's just your fate, or that's just the way life is, or you bad luck by nature, or you were just cursed, or in some of the more superstitious communities, then you convince yourself that someone else is envying you and placing the evil eye on you and making black magic on you and all sorts of things. The fact that these things exist and have their impact, I'm not disputing that. But the fact that we make it as powerful as we make it is where it's convenient for us to buy into it, so that we don't have to take accountability for our ineffectiveness in how it is that we're going about living life. But back to the fallacies and the mental health myths, right? So I decided to just browse around, and a couple of things grabbed my attention over the recent weeks, and you'll see there's a constant thread through all of these. So I thought I'd just save it and talk about it at some point, and here's me talking about it. So here's one that I came across from someone who's got an MSc. I'm assuming it's some sort of fancy degree or something that gives them kind of permission to be able to put forward these very intelligent sounding theories, right? So it says things like affirmations don't tend to work for those who experience a lot of early adversity. Now, when I started with this and I said, hey, things like affirmations don't tend to work, yes, I'm on board, because I just completely disagree with the whole affirmations thing. And it continues, and here's why. And this is where I then disagree with it, right? It says, and here's why. Safety is not just something that exists in the brain and in thoughts. It lives in the cells and in the autonomic nervous system. How did it get there? The same way it got there is the same way it needs to leave. So at which point did our autonomic nervous system develop a mind of its own to decide when it's going to hold on to something and when it's going to let go of something? Remember the episode I did about life is like a practical joke? Neuroplasticity, all of these wonderful things that have actual science behind it and actual anecdotal evidence that is supported by billions of lives who live that experience daily. How does none of that bring to bear on this? Because, again, if it lives in the cells and in the autonomic nervous system, what keeps it there? What sustains it? What nurtures it to always be there? Why is it that it can't release it? Well, if it can't release it on its own, how are you going to release it if you're not working at a cellular level. Let's continue. I'll come back to this and you'll see the thread. There's another one I came across that says you're not an overthinker. You're just stuck in a nervous system that believes thinking is safer than feeling. What bull? Where do we come up with this kind of nonsense? You're stuck in a nervous system that believes. You're stuck in a nervous system that believes. So it's not you that believes anymore. It's your nervous system has its own belief system. Your nervous system has its own value system, its own sense of self, its own consciousness, its own free will. It's sentient. Your nervous system is sentient, independent of your sentience. Why do people buy into these things, these concepts so quickly? Your nervous system is doing things to you. Shame is the root cause of perfectionism. It stems from a deep-seated belief of, I have to be perfect in order to be seen, loved, approved, and accepted. No, it doesn't. You know why? Think about this. For you to have that belief, I have to be perfect in order to be seen, loved, approved, and accepted, it demands a level of self-awareness and mindfulness about what others think of you, that if you actually possess that, if you actually had that inherent in the way you see yourself, in the way you see life, you wouldn't have a fear of perfectionism. You wouldn't have a need for perfectionism. Perfectionism is the avoidance of incompetence. That's it. It's the avoidance of incompetence, because incompetence undermines your ability to influence, to be influential with the people around you, because no one wants to be influenced by, or is going to be taking the lead from, someone who is clearly incompetent or who doesn't know what they're talking about. So incompetence threatens our standing with the people around us. So to avoid being incompetent or out of control, we strive for perfection so that you can't find fault with me. I'm afraid of being insignificant. Not, I have to be perfect in order to be seen, loved, approved, and accepted. How many people love a perfectionist? Come on, man. We need to apply our minds a bit more before we buy into these things. Here's another one. This is the fifth one. I'll hopefully stop on this one, and I'll just try and unpack a little bit more about what I'm saying about these things. Trauma is stored in the body until neuroplastic changes occur to the procedural memory system. My God, that sounds so profound. Wow. Let's say that again, because it's like just so full of stuff. Trauma is stored in the body until neuroplastic changes occur to the procedural memory system. So now we've got a procedural memory system versus other memory systems. And we've got this neuroplastic changes that just need to occur. How does it occur? Neuroplasticity is the natural reaction of your brain function, clinical function, your brain biology. It naturally reacts to exposure to new information, new experiences. Who exposes it? Your brain, your nervous system? No, you. Who's the person, or what's the being, what's the consciousness that has to process all of this information about how your nervous system stores this and stores that and everything else, and then feels relief from it? Did we ever bother to answer that question? Because that's what we seem to lack. We lost our sensibility because we're so convinced that the problem of who we are and how we feel lies in something that is out of our control. It can't be me, because like, look how hard I'm trying. You can't blame me for my life being like this, or being a failure at this, or not getting that right, or always having bad relationships, or people not liking me, or people judging me. You can't blame me for that, because what am I doing wrong? I'm so innocent. It's my father, it's my mother, it's my grandparents, it's society, it's my nervous system. No, it's not. It's your lack of self-awareness. It's your giving up of your agency of who you are, because you believe you're so defined by what happens around you and what happens to you, that who you are, you can't choose to be different. Why is it that for the last couple of thousand years, without this knowledge of our autonomic nervous system and procedural memory system and all of these things, people were able to have good, fulfilled lives. There was a sense of community, there was social cohesion, there was fulfillment, there was joy, there was all sorts of things. And then people got greedy, and the amount of greed in society surpassed the amount of selflessness and the amount of social cohesion in society, and that's why we are where we are. Because we became selfish. We started focusing on what we needed to get from relationships and everything else. And that's why I talked about this, about marriages and things. People go into a marriage and they're expecting their partner to come to the table with a whole lot of things. What are you bringing to the table, and what am I bringing to the table? And yeah, okay, that looks like we can have a certain quality of life. Seriously, man, what's the point of it if that's your approach to life? Your approach to life is about curiosity, exploration, building, growing, developing, finding new insights and inspiration and passion. We've forgotten that. Because now all of that is contained in a theme park somewhere. Go and pay an entrance fee and you get to have life experiences. Your body doesn't store trauma. And you know how I can prove this in a very simple way? Anyone who goes for trauma release exercises, they'll feel the initial relief of relieving that state in which they are, physical state. But the moment something happens that reminds them of that traumatic experience or affects them in the same way emotionally as that experience affected them, what do you think happens? Suddenly their nervous system remembers the trauma from there, and it like just brings it back in and says, no, I'm back here, so you need to go for another TRE session. I know people will take exception to my tone and to my approach, but it's not intended to be condescending. I'm hoping that people will listen to some of this at least and just consider that, okay, maybe we are actually running off on a tangent on something that makes absolutely no sense. You know, it's a thing I always say, pervasive ignorance is not necessarily wisdom. It's not collective wisdom. What happened to the wisdom in all of this? We lack critical thinking. That's why we buy into these concepts so easily. I mean, how can we buy into things like your nervous system is storing these things? The cells in your body are like holding on to things. How did your cells in your body and your nervous system develop its own willpower? That you now have to take your willpower and impose it on top of its willpower so that you can get it to relinquish what it is holding on to of something that you experienced. How ridiculous. It's about beliefs. What you believe to be true, not religious and spiritual beliefs. All of that is part of it. Who are you? So here's the thing about your nervous system storing stuff. Here's why I'm telling you that if you're going to keep focusing on the physical level and you're going to think that all the problems that you feel emotionally and spiritually is because of physical blockages and things like that, you know, chakras this and energy centers that and all of that. If you think it's because of that, you're not going to realize the simplicity of how it is that if you experience, say, a spasm, stiff shoulders, stiff neck, and someone comes and massages you and gives you a really good rub out, what happens? You feel relief? Yes. What does that relief do for you? It frees up some emotional and mental capacity because that distraction, that pain, that discomfort is no longer demanding attention from you. It's no longer getting in your way. So it frees up capacity. How do you use that capacity? Do you use that capacity to ensure that you understand how you got to that point so you don't get to that point again? Or do you use that capacity to continue doing more of what you were doing that got you into that state? And then you know that, hey, it's going to happen. When it happens, my response to it is get a massage. That's how we go into repetitive cycles in life. We go in rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat. Why? Because we're symptomatic in our thinking. We look at something that's a symptom and we see who can best address that symptom, and the one who best addresses the symptom or kills the symptom or wipes out the symptom or, heaven forbid, cuts out the symptom from your body, they consider to be genius. But no one stops to say, well, hold on, what caused it in the first place? Oh no, these things happen. It doesn't just happen. Life doesn't just happen. Relationships don't just fall apart, don't just break. People don't just suddenly outgrow each other. When did we become so shallow? Your body is a reflection of your emotional state. Your body does not determine your emotional state. When we start getting this into our heads, we'll understand why it is that they can only manage your chronic illness symptoms, they can never cure it. Because chronic illnesses, before it was called chronic illnesses, were called lifestyle diseases. And then we got fancy and we called it non-communicable diseases, because that more accurately described the fact that, hey, don't worry, just because someone around you has diabetes, you can't catch it from them. It's non-communicable. So you're safe, but it's a disease. It's not a disease. It's duress that's stored in your body because you're staying in that state. If I'm constantly in a stressed state, my body's going to be stressed along with me, because that's what my body's supposed to do. If I'm preparing myself for a fight, if I'm always ready to launch at someone, I'm going to be tense. Why? Not because my body's tensing up, so that means I have to be ready to launch at someone. No, I feel the fear, I feel the trepidation, I feel the nervousness, the anxiety, the thought of having to experience something that was horribly unpleasant, and I might have forgotten the actual incident itself, or it might have been just a result of a prolonged kind of exposure to a certain kind of behavior that eventually just made me entirely averse, repulsed by that kind of behavior. And now the moment I get the slightest hint about that kind of behavior happening again, I go into snap mode. I just want to fight with everything I've got to make sure that I'm just not going to deal with it anymore. Because I've had too much of it. I've reached a tolerance level. I've saturated my mental and emotional state with having to deal with that I know is unpleasant. It doesn't give me any goodness. It doesn't help me advance in life. It compromises my quality of life. It compromises my goals, everything. So automatically, with all of that in the back of my mind, when I see a hint of that happening again, I feel, my other favorite word, triggered. Why do I feel triggered? Oh no, I've got a trigger, nervous system dysregulated. I need to have a more healthy, regulated nervous system, or I'm neurodivergent, I see things differently from everyone else. So now all the neurodivergents, we all see things differently. Guess what? I think that's called being human, because there's no two humans that see things the same way, no matter how much they think they do. You might agree on certain aspects of life, but you don't see everything the same way. You don't experience it the same way, because there are far too many billions and trillions of variables at play for two people to have identical thoughts or emotions. We've forgotten how to be human because we're so busy trying to be perfect. And we're trying to be perfect because we're afraid we're going to be rejected if our humanness shows. And then we blame our nervous systems for it, when our nervous system is simply responding to how we feel. We blame our gut for how it is that we think. And again, if you're going to give yourself something to remedy the gut problem, you're going to have some relief, some absence of the discomfort that was distracting you, that was consuming some of your capacity to operate. So then you feel as if, hey, I feel so much lighter now, so I can do more, I can think more clearly and all of that. Yes, you can, because the immediate discomfort was relieved. What happens then? You guaranteed not to have the discomfort again? No, you're going to have it again. You know why you're going to have it again? Because you didn't change the thought processes and the perspectives and the beliefs that led to that tension in the first place. So what's your next best bet? Oh no, because I have this very specific, unique kind of thing that happens to me, I need to have a protected space. So then you start cutting people off and you start avoiding certain places, and then you have to have a safe space, and you have to have people respect your safe space and all of those things. That's called coping with life. It's not called living. And the reason we want to cope with life is because we're so desperate to be okay. And anything that threatens us being okay just completely destroys our sense of self, because We've lost our resilience. But what does resilience even look like? Do we even know anymore? Do we have an understanding of what resilience is about? Is resilience supposed to be our skills to be able to navigate a whole lot of different things preemptively because, I've done the work? No. Resilience is about adaptability. And adaptability is about your belief in your ability to figure things out. Not your belief in your preparedness to deal with something if it's going to potentially happen. That's self-fulfilling prophecies. That's defense mechanisms. That's having a toolbox with you because you're expecting a certain kind of problem to arise. That's not what resilience is about. That's fear. You're preempting all the time. And fear destroys things. It doesn't build anything up. Fear has a necessary place. It's there as a signaling system. It's there to advise us, to make us aware of the fact that, hey, there's something that's potentially a risk. And you don't seem to be okay with everything around it that you need to be able to do something with because it's threatening your ability to prevail in your life, to prevail in the relationship that you're in. So that fear, which provokes our feeling of our need to be significant, to be of consequence, of positive consequence, that fear then becomes our focus. I feel afraid and you making me feel this way. No, you feel afraid because you cannot prevail over what's happening in front of you. And that's how life works. We have physical constraints that are never ever going to be within our grasp. There's certain things that will always be out of our control. How we embrace, respect, understand, navigate, deal with, mitigate, how we do all of that, that's what determines our resilience. But guess what's required for all of that? Usually I would say just one thing, but now I have to say two things because the other thing that I always assumed was there by default is not there by default. Mindfulness and critical thinking. But mindfulness requires you to be present in the moment without you projecting your past experiences on this. Where do we get the past experiences from? Unpleasantness. The more intense the unpleasantness, and I'm not being insensitive about this. I get that it's some the things that really heavily weighs down on us, to a point of causing us to be dysfunctional in certain circumstances. But it doesn't change the truth of it. The unpleasantness of a past experience is what then informs our fear that we preemptively project onto the present moment, that then distracts us from the present moment because we're so busy trying to protect ourselves from experiencing or re-experiencing that past experience that we don't see it for what it is. And then we also don't see the opportunity for what it is, because every moment has opportunity and has a challenge. And if there's no challenge, there's no opportunity, because then it's just predictable. So that means it's already known and it's already familiar. So you're just doing something that you already know how to do. There's no opportunity to do more, to grow, to learn, to explore, to experiment, to innovate. None of that. So when all of this happens in the back of our minds, what do? We look for tools and habits, and we want to journal, and we want to do all of these things that protect us from being incompetent. But we don't focus on our understanding of the moment, our understanding of what's actually playing out, our awareness, our self-awareness, our ability to determine what is within our control and influence, and what is it that we're going to have to solicit support and feedback from others to be able to figure it out, or what is completely outside of our control. Was it De Bono or one of those guys that talked about the circles of control? I call it the circles of influence. In the center of it is everything that you can control. It's within your grasp. The circle around that is everything that you can't control but you can influence. And everything around that is everything that's outside of your control, but you just need to be aware of it. You can't influence it, but it can impact you. That's it. Life is simple. We overcomplicate it. Take that aside, and what are you left with? You're left with absolutely no way of figuring out what is or isn't within your control, because you're so focused on reaction. I have to, not I want to. So if you bought into all of these interventionist strategies and the whole mental health myths that go out there telling you how it is, that it's not your fault, it's toxic this, and it's nervous system dysregulation that, and all of that stuff, show me the science. When you show me the science, don't show me the current state of your nervous system when you're already in duress. Show me how it is that you feel absolutely perfectly fine and your nervous system just decides, I'm going to be in duress now. Show me when that happens. Show me where there's sentience, where there's consciousness, where there's a willpower within a specific organ of your body. Which reminds me also, we thought we knew so much about it. Just recently there's new research that confirmed that they discovered a new organ in the human body. Who would have thought? After knowing everything about everything, we suddenly discovered that there's something we didn't even know existed in all of us that was always there, but we just didn't see it. Anyway, the point is, if someone can prove, and they can't, right? Because this is where the science backs up what I'm saying, not what they're saying. When we talk about neuroplasticity, remember that one that talked about neuroplasticity? Where is it? Let me find it here. Trauma is stored in the body until neuroplastic changes occur to the procedural memory system. Experience something differently, that gives you insight into why something else happened the way it did. And suddenly you have a new insight. Neuroplasticity happens in your brain. Gain fresh insight about why it is that it happened and how it is that it was impossible for it to have gone any other way because of all the other contributing factors that the people around you were experiencing or dealing with or whatever it was. And guess what? Suddenly the impact of it is not the way it always has been. Neuroplasticity is achieved when you have an aha moment, fresh perspective, new insight, new understanding, a moment of realization, a new experience. When you experience something unexpectedly and it convinces you that, hey, you thought you'd never ever achieve this, but look, you achieved it. So that means that what you thought was impossible is actually not impossible. Neuroplasticity. And guess what? In that aha moment, in that moment of enlightenment, what do you think your nervous system is doing? No, we're resisting that moment of enlightenment. We're still holding on to your trauma from last year. No. It reacts. Your body reacts to your emotional and spiritual state. It doesn't determine it. But when you lose sight of that and you become distracted by the physical state you're in and you believe, and this is where beliefs, including religious beliefs, become a problem. Because it's distorted and it's not aligned with the practical reality of how you live your life. When you believe that, okay, no, well, this is just happening to me, so this must be another test or another trial, or my fate. There's contributing factors. Some of it are within your control and self-imposed, and some of it are environmental and it's out of your control, and that's why you have to embrace that. Again, back to the circles of control. What's in your control? What can you influence but is out of your direct control? What you can't influence but impacts you, which is the broader one, which is how the world works. That's what it's all about. And the moment you start wrapping your mind around that, instead of trying to find a way to make peace with the fact that your nervous system is doing something to you. It's your nervous system. It's responding to you. It's not telling you how you should feel. The myths in contemporary mainstream mental health has caused far more damage and harm than anything ever. Because we need so desperately to believe that it's not our fault that our life sucks. It's not our fault that the system is so overwhelming and overbearing and so unfair, that there's so little justice in the world. You know, the same way how people scroll past genocides and atrocities and human rights abuses and horrific news items, contemporary events and things like that, because they're just not looking for that. They're looking for relief, they're looking for entertainment, they're looking for the next practical joke or the next trend or theme that they want to apply, or the next challenge they want to do on TikTok or something. You know how people do that? Yeah, that's exactly how life works. What you pay attention to is what's going to affect you, is what you're going to feel emboldened or inspired to want to do something about. The same way a person can feel inspired to want to do the next stupid TikTok challenge is the same way their conscience, their beliefs, their value system will inspire them to want to do something about a wrong that they might have done to someone, or accountability that they might not have taken. How you see yourself is what will determine what you go out looking for. You'll go out looking to be a contributor towards challenging the injustices and the oppressions and the unfairness and the unhealthy trends and norms of society. You'll do that if that's who you want to be. If you feel as if that is something that you are responsible for, because you're taking from that ecosystem, so you should be giving something back. There has to be a balance. You can't just consume all the time. You have to also contribute towards what it is that you believe is lacking around you. But if you don't do that, if you don't hold yourself to that standard, guess what? You're going to be sitting there believing you're a victim because all of these things are so huge and so large and so out of control and so beyond your grasp and everything else. Because look, it's the billionaire class, it's the 1% that's doing this, it's the Zionists that's doing that. The only reason they can do any of this and get away with any of this nonsense that we're all struggling with is because the masses are sleeping on TikTok or on some other platform, on some other social media platform that convinces them that that instant hit is what they need. And then some clever person comes along and says, oh yeah, you're getting a dopamine rush and you're dopamine addicted and all of that nonsense. It's not. It's your sense of self. If that is lacking, if that is something that you have completely taken for granted because you're so focused on being appealing to the people around you, to your social structures, to strangers, to getting reactions and likes and having people understand your struggle and finding camaraderie and solidarity with other people who also have dysregulated nervous systems and who have some or other neurodivergent way of thinking and all that. When are we going to stop this bull? Act with purpose in life. Have conviction. Stand for something more than just being popular and being liked. What are you contributing towards this world that you think is a cesspool? Because remember, if in times of oppression you remain neutral, you are siding with the oppressor because you allow them to continue without any resistance. So if you don't like what you see in the world around you, what are you doing to change it? Your world. Don't worry about the global efforts out there. Your world. Because it's individuals that create critical mass that eventually becomes a global trend. So if you see the trends globally now that you don't like, consider which trends you're part of. And if you think everything is neutral, you didn't do that, you're not a bad person, you're not contributing towards what's happening in the Middle East or anything like that, your apathy enables it. Your apathy about what you see in the people around you and how they're struggling in life, and you think, not my problem. I've got my own problems to sort out. No one's taking care of my problems, so why must I care about them? That's exactly why we all struggle. Everyone's so focused on being taken care of first before they offer care and concern and compassion and understanding and empathy, that no one's doing it for anyone anymore, because it's like, hey, we all got our own problems, you know. No, that's where this mental health nonsense leads to, where it convinces you that your problem is more important than anyone else's problem, so that's why you must just focus on yourself and people must understand because you've got it so tough. You've got it so tough because the people around you are also not showing up for you. So what, are you going to be like them, or are you going to want to be more than that? Because if you want to be like them, if you're going to be self-centered and self-absorbed, then you lose the opportunity and the right to complain about the people around you who are self-absorbed or distracted that caused harm to you. We need to do better than this. This mental health madness and myths is just destroying us. We need to have more critical thinking, more grounded self-awareness, mindfulness, and purposefulness in how it is that we go about living life. Not this nonsense of believing that everything must just like fall into place because that's not our responsibility and we just minding our own business. And no, your nervous system is not making you feel a certain way. It is reacting to the way you feel. And when you realize that who you are is not what your body is. Who you are is what is resulting in the state of your body. When you realize that, and you understand that your body doesn't have a will of its own, it can't decide that it's not going to cooperate with you today. There has to be something that causes it to, that represses it or suppresses its function for it to create a problem for you. What is that cause? Don't be symptomatic about life. Be purposeful. And hopefully you'll experience a rush of fulfillment and accomplishment that you've never experienced before, because you'd always waited for something to give you that to you. And when you experience that, that's that moment of realization that you have power, you have influence, you have capability, you have agency. Connect with that, and I promise you, you'll see life in a way that will blow your mind. Absolutely blow your mind. And you look at all of these tropes on social media and you'll think like, what the hell? How could I have possibly bought into that? It's a moment of realization. It's not learning new tools and all of that. And I could go on in circles about this, but let's stop there. Own your life, own your space, own your thinking, own your beliefs. If you don't like how you feel about something, do something about it. If you don't like the circumstances you find yourself in, understand what's your contribution to it. What are you allowing to happen without challenge? What are you enabling? What are you contributing towards without meaning to contribute towards it? And take accountability for it. Don't stop and think, well, I didn't know, so you can't blame me. It's got nothing to do with blame. It's about accountability to do something about it. Take care. Hopefully this will give us food for thought, and we'll move beyond the stupidity of believing that our bodies are doing things to us instead of realizing our bodies are reacting to who we are. Take care.